Hey guys, it's Dasha. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to February's round of a game of tomes. If you don't know, this is my TBR game. I play this every month to decide what I'm reading because I am an indecisive bitch. If you don't know how the board works, if this is your first time here, there is a playlist down below and it's going to be linked up here as well that has the rules as well as every single other round that I've done so far. I think it's pretty fun to watch, so if you want to go binge, go ahead. But if you know how this works, let's get into it and let's see how I did with January's round. So in January, I didn't even have a stack. All the books that I picked were books that I either had through the library on Apple Books or through Scribd. So I'm gonna go through them regardless. My first book was a punishment. I had to randomize my entire TBR. I had picked The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins and I DNF'd this book, so it counts as completed. My first roll got me Sir Jorah. I had to randomize my fantasy TBR and pick a book from there. I had picked Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir and I DNF'd this one as well, so it still counts. This is one that I might come back to like way down the line, but I'm putting it down as a DNF for now, not only for the TBR, but also just in general. It's not a book that I want to read anytime soon. Maybe if the series is completed and people say that it's worth it, but anyways, for the purposes of this TBR, I'm counting it as DNF'd and it is completed for the TBR. Next, I had The Masters. I had to use a random word generator and find a book that fit that word. I had the word conflict, so I picked How to Hide an Empire by Daniel Immerwahr, and I completed this book. My next prompt was The Gods Would. I had to read a classic, and I picked And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, and I have completed this book. And then my final prompt was a battle card. I had to have a friend pick a book that they loved. I'd asked Miss Robin because I failed her pick last time. She picked Death Alive by George Pendle for me, and I did complete the book. So my TBR is technically completed. I will not be taking a punishment for that. However, I am stupid, and I did not realize when building the TBR that I had picked a location card for the classic prompt, meaning I had to pick a book that is on my owned TBR. And I did not do that. I do not own And Then There Were None. I don't even have it on the Apple Books. I read it on Scribd. And so therefore, because I apparently don't even know the rules to my own game, I'm going to take a punishment for failing to actually fulfill this prompt, I guess. I think that's the only fair thing to do because I don't know, I feel real dumb right now for not even realizing what my own prompt is. So yeah, I'm gonna take a punishment for this, but it's okay because again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the year, I'm going down to 4 rolls each month, notwithstanding punishments. So at least it'll still be 5 books probably, so it'll be reasonable. Hopefully. My reading plans for February are kind of weird. It's the shortest month of the year and I have a ton of stuff to do for the Game of Tomes readathon. We're hosting the full official main quest round in March, so there's a ton of work still to be done for that. Keep your eye out for the announcement videos. But yes, I have a lot of writing to do for that and just kind of organizing in the website and all that. So I don't really want to pick like massive books or dense books necessarily because I really want to focus on the readathon, make sure that's out on time. So I'm going to try to pick smaller books, I guess. I know it's going to be counterintuitive to my reading goals for the year, but you know what? It is what it is. I have other priorities this month and it's a short ass month. So also, if you missed it, I have a video that went up last week about some read-alongs that I'm co-hosting this year. And so every month I'm going to try to put those books on my official TBR. So if you want more details about those read-alongs, you can go check out the video. But yeah, the first month is February and the first book is starting in February. So I'm going to try to get the first book for the Witcher Long on this. And I'm also buddy reading a book with Ray and Robin. So hopefully I'll be able to fit that into this TBR as well. But enough chit-chatting. You guys kind of know my plans now. Let's get into the rolls. Okay, so we ended up here last time because we had one of these bad boys. I had to read Death Alive, which is what Robin had chosen for me, and based on this, I don't know if I could say definitively that I disliked it. I think it was rather a very neutral, like I actually straight up forgot that I read the book. I just thought it was very meh, so I'm gonna call it neutral, and so we are staying put. Given that I completely misunderstood the rules of my own game, I think it is only fair that I pick a punishment card. So we've got add another roll. Okay, that's not too bad. At least, I mean, I get some choice with it. It's not just a negative prompt necessarily, it could be something good, so I'm not hating this. All right, our first roll for February. 1. Targaryen, which is a fantasy. So our first actual roll worked out great. I got House Targaryen, and the prompt for the Targaryen house anytime I land on it is to read a fantasy. So of course, given that I am participating in and co-hosting some fantasy read-alongs, I'm going to pick The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is the first in the reading order of the Witcher series. However, it is a series of short stories relating to the Witcher series, so it's not technically the first book. The Witcher series follows Geralt, who is a monster hunter. He underwent a bunch of mutations when he was young, so he now possesses supernatural abilities, and he just roams around the lands looking for monsters to kill, completing contracts. I know that there is an overarching story in the main series, but like I said, this is a short story collection focusing on just a bunch of small stories set in the world, and it is first in the reading order. This is also the book that the first season of the Witcher Netflix show is based on, so it is the official starting point. I'm really excited for this. You guys know, I've mentioned it a few times, that I'm absolutely loving the Witcher 3 game right now. I've been playing it for a couple of months and I'm just hooked, absolutely hooked. I can't get enough of it, and from what I heard, these short stories are kind of like the side quests and the contracts in the game, meaning that they're independent from the main story, but they still are little self-contained stories in themselves, and they usually have maybe some morals or some ethical dilemmas in them. So I'm really excited to kind of get that from this, especially now that I know the world of The Witcher quite well. I feel like it's going to be a lot easier to get into this and understand what's happening, because otherwise I find short stories are not a great way to introduce something, in my opinion. But given that I know the world and the characters, I think it's going to be a lot easier to get into this. And it's fairly short, which I love, because a lot of fantasy is very long. So I'm really pumped to finally start the Witcher series in February. Roll number 2. 1. We get a Raven card. And we've got read a book you forgot you owned. So our next prompt was a Raven card, which is usually a negative prompt. This one is to read a book I forgot I owned. There's a lot I could do for this, to be honest. I have 95 books on my own TBR, which I know is not a lot by booktube standards, but when you have a small pea brain like mine, you tend to forget about them a lot. So I definitely had quite a few to pick from, and I went for one that I bought, I think it was in 2019, when I was just getting back into reading and I was scouring Value Village for books that just sounded interesting. And so I picked up The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. And this was a book that I'd shoved in the back of my nonfiction shelf because I was running out of space, and I was like, okay, well, I'll put the ones I've actually read at the front, and I'll put the ones I haven't read yet in the back, just so I could, you know, I like having the ones that I liked and enjoyed and the ones I've actually read at the forefront. So I put this in the back and I forgot about it for ages. I literally forgot that I owned this. Every single time I was reorganizing my books and I saw this, I'm like, oh yeah, I have this book. Therefore, I'm counting it for this. I am quite excited for this one, and I'll tell you why specifically, because I've never really had the urge to read it until now. However, given all that is happening in the world, aka a potential World War III, and also given that I'm currently applying to a master's programs, and those programs all have to do with international affairs, international security, I feel like this is just on my brain lately, and I feel like this book is going to be perfect to supplement all this knowledge that I'm consuming about this topic. The Shock Doctrine is about disaster capitalism, so people that profit off tragedies, whether they're natural disasters or wars or armed conflicts. I feel like this is just going to be something that is so useful to know, because there's constant conflict in the world anyways. Like, there's no reason to only read about it in a historical context. I feel like it's going to be really helpful to read about it in a, this is how things work behind the scenes, so I can apply it to future conflicts and future events and knowledge, if that made any sense. I also know that this book has kind of entered the canon of modern nonfiction classics. It's a book that has been referenced tons of times by other people. It's quite beloved. There's been a million different editions that I've seen of it. Like, it's a very popular and beloved book. I'm hoping that means it is trustworthy and a good read. I think that's also pretty important beyond popularity. And like I said, I think it's going to be a very timely thing to read. Not super long either, which is great. Might be contrary to my reading goals, but hey, it is what it is. Rule number 3. 3. 1, 2, 3. We've got Old Town, read a nonfiction. I think the board is trying to make up for last month, because last month I read a ton of books that were not on my own TBR, which is not good. I usually like reading things that I own. And on top of that, I read just a shit ton of fantasy. So now it's making me read a nonfiction that I own, which is good. There's a lot of those, but I just think it's funny how like opposite this is from last month. I'm picking for this something that I've been excited for a little while. I've talked about it on my channel before. It's Cultish by Amanda Montell. This is about the language behind not only cults, but also kind of cultish groups. She mentions Soul Cycle at the beginning, and social media gurus, and the kind of language that they use as well that kind of gives off those cultish vibes. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm just a sucker for this cover, but I've just been so drawn to this book. I feel like it's gonna be really interesting, and I feel like I'm gonna really, really love it. Like if I did another 5-star predictions list, I feel like this would be on it. I can't say why 100%, but either way, I'm really, really excited for this. And it's a super short book. Again, it's just the cutest little, I don't know if you guys can tell how like genuinely tiny this book is. Like it's like freakishly small for a hardback, but it's fine. It's fine. That just means I'm gonna get through it quicker, hopefully. I'm really pumped for this. I've been looking for an opportunity to read this, and I guess this is the month of nonfiction, and I'm okay with it, and I'm finally gonna be putting this on my TBR. I dropped my card. Roll number 4. 3. 1, 2, 3. House Martell, which is a free space. We've got another house this time. It is House Martell, which is a free space, which is awesome. I get a little bit of free reign. So I'm gonna take this opportunity to slide that buddy read in. I'm going to be buddy reading The Toll with Ray and Robin. That is the 3rd book in the Arc of the Scythe series, which I still have yet to finish. I own the first 2 books and I have read them. The first one I've read twice in preparation to continue the 2nd book, and then I just never continued after the 2nd book because I was really disappointed by it. It was still good. I think I still gave it a 4-star, but it just went in all these crazy directions, and I've kind of blocked a lot of this out of my mind, especially because when I read it, it was January of 2020, so shit was about to hit the fan. I was traveling. I've just forgotten a lot of it, and I think I'm gonna have to reread it before I get to the buddy read with the girls. They've been reading it together. I just didn't really want to reread. I didn't really have time for it when they were reading Scythe. So I'm gonna be just joining them for the tail end of the buddy read, and I'm definitely gonna have to reread this. This is kind of like softly on my TBR anyways, but The Toll is definitely going to be like on the TBR. That's the book I'm counting for this. This is a series set in a world where humans have conquered death and disease. There's no bad things in the world, there's no poverty, and in order to keep the population at a reasonable rate, because that's kind of the only problem left, there are a group of people called scythes, and they're the only ones allowed to technically kill people, because in this world, when you die by some kind of accident or on purpose, you are still regenerated. Like, you don't actually die unless a scythe kills you. So you follow in this book 2 apprentice scythes who are learning the ins and outs of the scythedom. There's also this like AI government that oversees everything, and there's all these really interesting little intricacies to this world that I really, really liked. The first book especially, I thought, presented a lot of really good ethical, moral questions in a great way for a young adult audience, because this is a young adult series, but in a way that was still deep enough for adult audiences to really enjoy it. I felt like some of that was lacking in Thunderhead, but I'm hoping The Toll kind of picks up where all that left off. I'm hoping I really, really love it because of how much I enjoyed Scythe. Scythe was the easiest 5 stars I've given in a long time. Like both times I read it, I just thought it was absolutely phenomenal. So I'm hoping that The Toll lives up to what the first book started, and I'm hoping that by rereading the Thunderhead, maybe I can enjoy it a little bit more than the first time. I think I was like riding off the high of the first one, so maybe by not reading this one, going straight to this and then The Toll, maybe I'll like this more. But yes, The Toll by Neil Shusterman is on my February TBR to be read with Ray and Robin, and I'm really excited because I love buddy reading with those 2. And roll number 5, our extra roll. 2. 1, 2. And we've got The Wall. Read a book that's been on your TBR for too long. And finally, we've got the prompt of The Wall. I have to pick a book that's been on my TBR for too long, and there's, again, a lot of these. What's nice is that most of the ones I can think of that have been on my TBR for absolutely ages are classics, and one of my goals this year was to read more classics, so I am going to be picking Tender as the Night by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This is a modern classic, but it is still a classic, you know, it's fine. This my mom gave to me back in like 2017, 2018. It's been ages. It was even before I got back into reading in 2019. Because I was like, I didn't know what I liked at that point anymore because I'd grown out of a lot of YA, but I didn't really know what was popular anymore. So I asked for classics for Christmas and my birthday and stuff. So I got this for Christmas one year. It's been rotting on my shelf since. I'm terrible at like thinking about it and picking it up because I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm in the mood. But you know what? It's short and sweet. One of my goals this year is to read more classics, so I think this is the right time to pick it up. All that I know about this is that it is set on the French Riviera in the 1920s, and it involves a lot of decadence and like discussions around societal norms at the time and just the whole era of like opulence, which sounds like fun, to be honest. F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing is pretty easy to get through, so I don't think I'm gonna like struggle through this, and I think the discussions are gonna be interesting, so I'm looking forward to it. And it's mercifully quite short. So here is the final little stack plus the toll. I think it's a decently sized stack, to be quite honest with you. For the shortest month of the year, and considering other things I have to do, I'm pretty happy with this. I think it could have gone a lot worse. There are a few other books that I have like on hold at the library that might come in that I might read, considering those aren't too long, so I'll probably get through those in a reasonable amount of time. I still probably have space to read some other things, especially fantasy. There's not enough fantasy on this list for me, and I love my fantasy, so I'm hoping to maybe read some fantasy novellas, maybe like Peter Jelly Clark, because his books are pretty short. That would be pretty good. Or maybe some horror, because that's a little shorter too usually, so we'll see what happens. I'm not holding my breath because, as I keep repeating, it's a short month and I have a lot to do, but I'm sure I'll get to something else other than this, so keep an eye out for obviously my February wrap-up where I talk about all those things. But yeah, that's the list, as well as a few other randoms. I have the playlist for Game of Tomes, like I mentioned, linked down below, as well as some other videos that I might have talked about, and they're linked here. My social media is also down there. You guys can come talk to me there anytime. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!